Hello everyone, welcome to the Redmen TV. It's the deep dive that we've all been waiting for. Yes, Josh has planned this one. It is the Manchester City deep dive, the review, the masterclass of Arne Slot, the review. We can't wait to get into it, Josh. What a weekend, just generally speaking, what a great weekend.
Yeah, unbelievable, wasn't it? I think the three teams beneath Liverpool all lost, didn't they?
I did not even recognise that.
Yeah. And Liverpool obviously go to the champions, the place of the champions, and as you say, masterclass is the word for it, I think. That should have been on the thumbnail, really, to be fair.
It's in the title.
Oh, is it? I like it. But yeah, spot on, mate.
We'd have had masterclass in the thumbnail if you didn't send the agenda over 20 minutes ago.
I'm not a morning person, for those who don't know.
So let's get into it, mate. Pep Guardiola picks an offensive side.
He does. I was a bit surprised by the team he picked because I thought I mean, to be fair, Pep's capable of that, but I thought it was a bit of a chest out team. You know, let's go then type thing, and his team haven't been able to do that all season really. So to pick a team of, I thought it's basically a back four.
Yeah. Nico
Gonzalez and everyone else is a forward. That's basically how I interpreted it. So I was thinking, like, the other week Brighton played a game. Can't remember who it was against. He got absolutely battered, and it was because
Bournemouth.
It might have been Bournemouth, but the manager picks Jack Hinchelwood as the 6, and he picked Minter, Pedro, Rutte, Welbeck. He picked about 9 forwards, and and Hinchelwood was just stood in it. Have you seen that meme where there's loads of army people running towards one fella with a spear? That was what it was, and he got battered. So I thought to myself, Pep's picked a brave team there, considering what Liverpool are really good at. So I thought going into it was going to be a little bit like potentially Spurs away. You know, the 6-3.
6-3, yeah.
I thought it was going to be along them lines, but
basketball.
It really didn't play like that, though, did it?
No, it didn't. I was going to ask you a question because you said there you were really surprised with what Pep Guardiola did. Were you more surprised at Pep Guardiola's selection, or were you more surprised at Arne Slot's selection?
Probably more surprised with Guardiola. I think with Slot maybe was a little bit more, I don't want to say conservative, but to pick an extra midfielder rather than someone like a Gakpo or a Jota, or he's gone with Curtis Jones there. I don't think it was defensive necessarily, but considering what City have been this season and what we previewed last week and that, we know they're vulnerable and stuff if you have a go at them, but you have to be brave enough to have a go at them. I was a little bit like, don't be letting them off the hook here. Don't be treating them like they're still this unbelievable side, because if you attack them this season, you can get at them. What about you?
I was surprised by Slot's team and the way it's set up, I think, massively. Whether it was more so than Pep Guardiola's selection, not 100% sure. What I think after the fact was probably more like hindsight being 2020 and all that. I think Guardiola went, you know what, these lads aren't great at defending. Aren't great at defending. My team, Man City, if you're Guardiola, and he's gone, let's just try and score more goals than Liverpool.
Yeah.
And let's hope that the crowd can help us out here, and, it being at the Etihad and play into the fact that Liverpool haven't won there in the Premier League while I've been a manager of Manchester City. So I think that's where he leaned into, and I can kind of understand that a little bit. But when I saw the side, the first thing I thought, and I think I said this on the watch along and the build-up shows and stuff, was like, where are the legs? Where are the legs in the middle of the park? That's where you, historically, your positionalism sort of style of football has always been about dominating the middle of the park. And those 3 midfielders, for me, were never going to dominate the middle of the park.
Well, I think he picks the youngest team he's picked all season, which might have been a means of competing with Liverpool's legs by just going for youth. Like in the game at Anfield, I think you're right. I think with it being Anfield, he was a little bit more like, we don't want to get ruined here. Do you know what I mean? So he didn't start with any conventional wingers, which is mad for Guardiola. In this game, he starts with Savinho and Doku on either side. De Bruyne plays, Marmouche is on the pitch, Foden's there. So that's a very offensive side. So I expected an offensive game. But I think for the most part, both teams showed each other a lot of respect. I felt both teams, especially Liverpool, prioritised like, we're not getting opened up here, rather than we're better than you. Let's just have a go then. Come on, that's end-to-end basketball, all that sort of thing. I felt Liverpool still treated them like a top Guardiola team, and I have no criticism of that now. We come out 2-0 winners, really impressive stuff. But I also think a different approach could have resulted in us hitting them for 5 potentially, but then maybe because you're playing into the variants, you also concede a few. With it being at the Etihad, maybe you lose control of the scoreline a little bit, and maybe you can potentially lose them games. So, yeah, the way in which it played out surprised me a touch. But bottom line is we won a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think that was, obviously central to it, and we'll talk about the Curtis Jones and Dom Szoboszlai and stuff, but for me, in those two players here, I'm just going to put the back line of Manchester City as a flat back four, let's say, and you're almost occupying, when we've got the ball, all 4 of them almost at all times. And that can be through occupying them by being like this, or it can be what I understood it to be early doors in the game. You got Ake and you got Kusanov here, and it's like, who don't mark? Because they've not played together a lot, because he's a new signing, Kusanov. And you're essentially, I think it's easier to have a focal point and know exactly what your job and role is. But where you've got 2 lads who are just disappearing behind the midfield, I thought it asked question marks of a pairing that haven't played together very often, because you need their communication to be key, and Kusanov's English, as we know, isn't quite good enough yet.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Kusanov is obviously new in the country, can't yet speak the same language as Guardiola, is what he said a few weeks ago. I doubt it's changed in that space of time. And it's a relatively complex tactical system to come up against what Liverpool are doing. And, I don't want to downplay League One, but Kusanov, it remains to be seen whether he'll come up against things like that, where you've got 2 10s essentially. But even the back 4 stuff, going back to like Liverpool being a bit more conservative than usual, even though they are like 20 points ahead of Manchester City in the table. We were even reluctant to like do the high pressing and that.
Yeah,
like,
it was a low block.
Oh yeah, by the end of the game it was. But even when the scorelines were level and it was even, it was still very much like
mid.
It was mid, and it was very much like the likes of Kusanov, who you can force into a mistake by pressing him. We just let him have the ball and we killed him that way, which is interesting to me. There's 2 different ways of doing it really. If you've got like a dodgy centre half or whatever who you can target a little bit, you can either press him into the ground and force a mistake out of him, or you can basically mark everyone else and basically say to him, what are you going to do, mate? And they suffer that way. I thought Liverpool, just because of City being vulnerable this season, would go for the throat, which we did at Anfield, press them high. In this game, we didn't go for the throat with the high press from the off. I go back to what I said before. It was very much about like, we are a compact unit, really, really. I mean, we've got visitors to touch on it and that, but I think it was the best defensive performance I've seen of Liverpool under Slot so far.
I'd go a step further than that, and I agree with what you've said. I think it was the best tactical plan that we've seen out of Slot this season as well.
Yeah.
Because one of the beautiful things about tactics is the element of surprise. I don't think for all the world that Guardiola sat there and thought Liverpool would play like that, because of the 20-point gap, because of how the game at Anfield went, and because of the pressure situation. I don't think he thought we'd be He thought, Slot thought, I'm going to make them play our game, and Guardiola City played our game.
Yeah,
and it was not the game that they were expecting to play.
I think Guardiola would have expected a bit more of this, where he can entice us in, and then maybe, you can get Doku, you can get Savinho and Doku really really isolated with massive spaces and that on the pitch, because we've done the high press. But to opt against doing that,
brave, innit?
It is a brave move, and it's a surprising move as well, and one that, if you'd have said to me before the game, I'd have been a bit like, so you're going to let them play? But
you're going to give them 70% of the ball, give or take,
which I was really unsure about. But if you actually look at their back line on the day,
let's have a look at this one then.
Yeah, well, their back line on the day is Rico Lewis, Kuzanov, who doesn't speak English, Nathan Ake, and Josko Gvardiol. So when you actually think about it, if you do give them the ball,
what are they going to do?
What exactly? They're probably not going to solve it as well as the Stones is. Yes. You know, someone like that. But yeah, that's the first phase anyway. So what you can see there is Liverpool's 4-2-4 shape, and you can see 4-2-4-0 is what we're going with on this. That's been like the common theme on in the tactics space, and that because Liverpool's 4-2-4, the front bank of four there is basically where the midfield bank would be, and we're just letting the likes of Kuzanov and Ake have the ball, and that's deliberate. So rather than pressing them into the ground, we're asking questions of them by marking everyone else, blocking access to the centre. And there was a few moments where he just lost the ball. I remember, I think Ruben Diaz came on and just
hit it into the back of Salah.
Yeah, and then we got on a break in that and nearly scored from it, I think.
That pass is going nowhere, by the way. Yeah. Even if it doesn't hit Salah, that pass is not going to a Manchester City player.
Yeah, but that way of setting up, I mean, Liverpool have set up like that for most of the season, but the whole 2-10s thing and opting against the high press and going a little bit deeper was, I think it would have caught Pep off guard. You know, I've followed Liverpool all season, every single game, and it caught me off guard. I didn't expect us to do it. But it definitely worked. Yeah,
I think that the other thing that we maybe could touch on here before we go into more of what Liverpool did in the attacking sense, maybe if we sort of use the tactics board a little bit, because I want to talk about the low block, the second half, let's say. And we can take City players off here, and how you felt Liverpool had game planned for their usage of Savinho and Doku, because
How Liverpool had game
planned for it, because this was a game for me where Mo Salah was here a lot more than we've seen. And again, does that show respect to Manchester City, the fact that this game he does do that and he hasn't been doing that?
Yeah, 100%. Go back to it, I think Liverpool treated City, Slot treated Guardiola like they are current champions and like they're currently leading the league and stuff like that, and not like we hammered them when we met them early in the season, not that we're 20 points ahead. So and it worked as well. It absolutely worked, getting Salah to track back, which we just don't see. Salah is given that license to gamble, given the license to be a cheat for Liverpool by staying high and leading those counter attacks and that. But with Doku causing problems, we know Gvardiol gets in the goals as well. Guardiol's playing on that side. Salah did his fair share of tracking back, and I think the Doku thing with Trent, obviously he breaks a record. We all know about this. He number of times dribbled past.
Completed none of 5 crosses. Only got 2 passes into the final third in the entire 90 minutes.
Yeah, I'll say a few things on this. So, number one, I don't think it's the plan for your fullback to get beat 13 times or whatever it is. So there's no way, I'm not having it that you can look at that and go, oh yeah, well we actually wanted that to happen. I'm not having that really. I think Trent should do better. I think Trent should win more of his duels, and it's signature Trent really to get done that often. But I think the end product goes into, number one, Doku's lack of end product generally, which I don't think we're surprised by.
In the words of Steve Hall, all fart no shit.
Indeed. And number two, I think if City are going to attack some way, so if they're going to do it, let them go around you rather than through you. So that's what we did. We let them go around us. And if you can kind of anticipate that, which I think we did often, Van Dijk and Kanate are there all the time to just sweep it up and get rid.
Yeah, well, listen,
and Haaland didn't play.
Exactly. This is the thing. I'm 100% with you on this. The plan isn't for Trent to get beaten all the time, but the plan is for when he does get beaten to have these two. And let's switch it up and do Viz 3 and talk about Viz 3, if you don't mind, please, Josh, a little bit here.
Viz
because
3.
We want to talk about McAllister and Gravenberch dropping back as well.
In this one, they are relatively high here compared to where we ended up in the game. You know, we ended up with a low block. This isn't technically a low block yet in this moment, but what you can see there is Gravenberch putting pressure on the ball by half vacating the spot. But to be fair, even when he didn't really do that, McAllister was very very interested in basically blocking off that channel between Van Dijk and Robertson to the extent that pretty often he formed a back five. Gravenberch did the same with the channel between Konate and Trent. Sometimes both were doing it at once and you had a back six. Arsenal did back six stuff when they came to the Etihad earlier in the season. Arsenal didn't have a 2-0 lead at the time, I don't think. But that's kind of how Liverpool managed City from a width perspective. So we know what City do. Like, if we can go on.
Yeah, I was going to say, what allows us to do this for me is if you get them into that position there and you think that this channel's going to be blocked off by Gravenberch, this channel's going to be blocked off by McAllister, these two tens become your midfield too.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, for me, is where City have had so much... over the years, think about... I'm going to just put them down in random positions. They create a shell around you that they pass around, and it's normally on the edge of the box here, right? And how many times has Kevin De Bruyne stood over by somebody and knocked little passes off? We dropped 2 midfielders into the back line and 2 forwards to become our DMs in what we would in how we would normally defend. So when Doku takes the football and drives in here, you've got coverage everywhere, because you're just not able to get through Liverpool in any way, shape or form. And that all comes from the 2-10s.
Yeah.
And that is also how we attacked them as well. So I think Slot, to his credit, hasn't just looked back at the game against Manchester City this season, hasn't just looked back at what Arsenal have done against them. I think he's looked back at all the games that Jurgen Klopp's played and gone, where did they get success against us and how should I stop that? And this is the plan that he came up with.
Well, Slot strikes me as a bit of a not necessarily a historian, but he strikes me as someone who's really keen to learn about what other teams are doing. He's touched on elements of Girona and things like that, and Bournemouth and stuff, and I think he'll just know the basics of what Pep Guardiola is doing, obviously, because he'll want to learn from me, he'll want to take elements of his game anyway. Mm-hmm. But I think the City that we've watched over the years, how many times have we seen City facing a block, right? David Silva comes to mind, but De Bruyne as well, where they'll be playing around the block and all that, and the way they get actually in behind and get a tap in is at some point at the relevant time, David Silva does that.
Yes.
Runs beyond the last line between the fullback and the centre-back of the opposition. De Bruyne does the same from the opposite side.
Exactly where we put Gravenberch and McAllister.
Exactly. So if you get them there blocking those channels, City were presented with a bit of a problem, as like, how exactly do we get behind them here? So the only approach that they had to be able to do it was Doku and Savinho. And because of that, they're then in the category of predictable, basically, because we know exactly what they're doing. So by establishing that kind of like back six at times, you're taking care of the width problem. So you've got width compactness, basically. You've got horizontal compactness, and the vertical compactness comes in by Liverpool doing the 2-10s thing. So the vertical as in front to back, there's nothing in that. You occupying a low block on that, and width wise you've got the six across the back, so you can't really go through us. You can barely go around us because we've got a back six at times.
Sound like a nursery rhyme, this.
Yeah. And City end up with 10 shots from outside the box, and that's because of that. And
so for all the possession, Liverpool win the XG battle, as we know. But let's go back to what the actual original order of the agenda. My apologies. Let's talk about how these 2-10s worked in an attacking sense this time. So we're going to move these all up the field. We're going to get Salah. We're going to get Diaz, and we're gonna think about it. Now we'll start off with probably a nice viz here, I think, if that's okay, Aaron, for us. And you want to talk me through this one, mate? Yeah.
So if we look at this one, I think this is, we're gonna play this one out, the full action in a sec. But what I'm highlighting there basically is Konate's on the ball at the back, and he's about to play the pass to Salah. Nathan Ake is anticipating a pass into Szoboszlai, is that?
Yeah, Szoboszlai, yeah.
So you can see, if you really focus on Nathan Ake's body position there, I've took this screenshot just as Nathan Ake realises the pass isn't actually going to Szoboszlai. So what you can see is basically the problem that Liverpool are presenting there to Nathan Ake by, if we play 2 10s, the centre-back's constantly got that question of, do I go or do I stay? And it often drags them out of position. And when that happens, that allows the likes of Salah and Diaz to run into the space that's been left vacant by one of the centre-backs who have been, enticed into going into the middle to follow Jones or to follow Szoboszlai or whatever. So this is actually the build-up to the goal as well. Liverpool score from this.
Yeah.
But to see Nathan Ake there caught between posts, not knowing whether to go or whether to stay, Salah waiting to running behind, and Kanate playing a bit of a deceiving pass. You don't know whether I'm going central, you don't know whether I'm going wide. I feel like that, in a nutshell, basically, is the perks of playing with 2 10s and 2 wide forwards who are going to come inside and score goals, basically.
Absolutely. And like before I got Josh's agenda, I knew I wanted to talk about this goal. I have picked almost the exact same still frame as my starting point. The ball is maybe 2 feet different. So if you can bring up my NDI now, you can see there. Now, I'm probably a touch later. So you can see Nathan Ake there. He's now decided the ball's not going, and he's doing exactly what you said he would. He's turning around, which is obviously what we wanted him to do. But what Dom Szoboszlai has done by that is he's found himself behind the midfield line of Manchester City in, for them, no man's land. So the ball's going to come out here and it's going to go behind Salah. And I think Salah wants that ball over the top, to be honest with you. But Konate's played the safe ball and it ends up being an up back through sort of a thing here, doesn't it? Because as we move on to the next still, you can see Salah's got it just against the touchline. His pass is on there to Trent Alexander-Arnold. Szoboszlai's still in a good position where he could have received the ball, to be fair, and driven at Manchester City's defence. So we've got options there had we decided to go that way around. But because of the pressure by Guardiola, the ball goes back to Trent Alexander-Arnold, as you can see. Szoboszlai continues his run and Salah pirouettes basically around Guardiola. So we move it on now. The ball's at Trent Alexander-Arnold's feet. He's got a nice pass in here if he wants. Manchester City's defensive line, midfield line is still sort of around here, and the ball goes over the top. And as Trent's about to kick this ball over the top, Szoboszlai knows he's offside, so gets himself out of there. But in doing so, brings Nathan Ake back into play and gives Salah essentially a one-on-one with Guardiola. So the ball goes in. At this point, Szoboszlai and Ake are kind of engaged, but Ake wants to cover this space inside, so it has to leave Szoboszlai. I'm just going to draw your attention to Curtis Jones here, who's in a load of space, what Man City might call no man's land as well, because all of their midfielders essentially ran up to join the press against Trent Alexander-Arnold, because I think they were told, don't let Trent pass the ball. So at that point, we'll move it on again. And now, look where Kurt Jones is here. Szoboszlai's got himself into quite a bit of space there on the edge of the penalty area. And Salah is one-on-one, is 1v2 with Ake and Guardiola. So we move it on one more time. Look, I'm going to go back. Look at Curtis Jones. He makes this run. Now, Kuzanov wants to attack Szoboszlai, but because of this run by Curtis Jones, he is unable to. Because watch where Curtis ends up by the time Salah's been dribbling on this. He is engaged, Kuzanov, which leaves Szoboszlai in loads of space in the penalty area. And again, if you just want to keep your eye on where Curtis Jones ends up, behind the line, he's held, the back line's had to stay. He's held Kuzanov. Ake was drawn over to Salah because of Szoboszlai's position, and we know that the ball ends up in the back of the net, and Curtis Jones is saying, I'm not in the way, lads. I am not in the way. And he very much wasn't. And that all stems from what you highlighted with one still, Josh, the two 10s, or the 2 centre forwards, however you want to play it. Yeah,
well, this is essentially how it looks on the board. I mean, the idea is the 2 10s go like that. basically draw in the two centre-backs and the wide forwards, just make those runs, those inverted runs, and just cause City major problems. And if you look at if you can get up the second to last viz that you've just been using,
yeah,
and if we can get that up,
the Szoboszlai shot one,
yeah. So look at City's defence there, defending with 5 players,
yeah,
and that's been a recurring theme with them all season. They just haven't got enough players behind the ball, easily opened up. They've got Doku, they've got Foden, they've got Savinho, and they've got De Bruyne, all ahead of the ball, out of play. Whereas if you think of that in contrast to what we had for Liverpool the whole game, Liverpool consistently had 10 players behind the ball and things like that. So you could argue Guardiola's initial team selection, going for a gang of forwards, and Slot going for an extra midfielder and being a bit more cautious. You could argue that played out in situations like that, where City have a team that's essentially split in half, whereas Liverpool have a team that, arguably compared to normal, is even more together.
Yeah, and I'll take it back to another couple of stills. So where Salah's driving into the penalty area, and you can see on this one, it's 4v4.
Yeah.
There's a City midfielder or defender tracking back over here. He's nowhere near play. There's 4v4, and 2 of Liverpool's 4 are in space, and 2 of City's are engaged on Salah.
Yeah. So this is what I mean. You turn it into a game where Liverpool have half as many shots as City during a match. Liverpool have 8, City have 16, but Liverpool still win the expected goals because Liverpool's shots are more valuable, the more clear cut, far more open. Whereas City consistently shooting with plenty of Liverpool players between the ball and the goal, and lots from outside the box and things like that. I don't think there was one really where you think to yourself you should score that for Manchester City. So to do that at the Etihad, I think it's the second lowest XG that a Pep Guardiola team's created at the Etihad since he's been in charge. I think I'm right in saying that. So Liverpool, honestly, absolutely tactical masterclass, really. And I think one thing I'll say as well, this performance for me, very different to what we've seen from Liverpool in the large majority of other games. And I think this one in particular bodes really well for Europe for me.
Yes.
If you're in a knockout competition and you're going away from home against a contender, to be able to play like this and basically control the game, very Benitez for me, very Mourinho, early 2008 or something like that, where you can go away and you can perform like that, keep a clean sheet, pose a threat, the game gets played on your terms. Really impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to sort of riff off that a little bit, obviously, we know from the last 15 years when Pep Guardiola goes into and makes Barcelona an absolute force, then he goes to Bayern Munich and plays it slightly differently, more focus on wing play, comes into City, dominates the centre of the park. Positionalism is what Guardiola uses, but positionalism requires space, and it requires correct spacing. Liverpool's 1 to 11 players put themselves in great positions to stop the passes for Manchester City in the attacking third especially, and I just wonder whether that, along with everything else that Guardiola has seen over the course of this season, we might see another evolution of Guardiola's football to combat what is now being used against him. And it's not just this season. There's a few different sort of variations of tactics that have sprung up against this City side that I think he'll be worrying and planning for the next phase. And it's not to say that he can't come up with it. He is the best football manager, I think, of all time, Guardiola.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm actually, in some weird ways, quite excited to see what he comes up with next, whether he's got the heart and the endeavour to be able to follow it through. Let's hope he doesn't. Indeed,
yeah. But I think Liverpool fans will have went into this season hoping that Slot isn't like that, really, in the sense of, I think Liverpool fans appreciate elements of just being a bit more practical when necessary, being a bit streetwise about your tactical approach and things like that. And I think initially some sections of supporters were painting him as like a Brendan Rodgers figure who was going to be a very certain way. But what we've seen over the course of the season, and especially in this game, is a willingness to adapt, an appreciation for difference, tactical approaches depending on the match scenario, depending on the venue, depending on the scoreline, the game state and everything.
Form of players.
Yeah, the players that you've got available and everything, you know, it's been really impressive. So, you know, Slot so far is far from a one-trick pony when it comes to tactics, and I think this one, arguably more than any other game, really has given me a lot of confidence that Liverpool can go to.
I say PSG. So we're going there next.
PSG, yeah, but say Barca at the Nou Camp at the moment, Bayern Munich at the, like for example last season. This reminded me of a game last season. Leverkusen come up against Bayern Munich. Xabi Alonso's Leverkusen. Bayern Munich played the game like they were the team leading the league. They were the team unbeaten and all that, but it was like part of Xabi's plan. Like he just let them have the ball. I think they ended up beating them like 3-0 or something. But you can control games without the ball is what I'm getting at. And I thought Liverpool's defensive approach here was spot on.
Absolutely, 100%. We're going over to look at the corner routines. Anyone who listened to the podcast and anyone who watched all the Liverpool games as well over the last few weeks will have noticed that Liverpool's, nicely done Aaron, Liverpool's first corner has been something that's been pre-planned in each game. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Manchester City one. We're going to talk about the Wolves corner. We're going to talk about the Everton corner. We're going to talk about Aaron Briggs. We're going to talk about a very fruitful Bournemouth corner against Arsenal as well. So if you want to go over there, you can get a free month of Redmen Plus now using the code DEEP. That's DEEP. It's in the game. So yeah, go over to redmenplus.com. It will expire on the 16th of March. Use the code DEEP and you will get a Club Captain subscription free for a month. We'll be live over on Redmen Plus in around about 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you very much for joining us. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. Big up Josh Williams, the master tactician himself, and we'll see you all soon. Ta-ra.